Hey, and welcome to Game Talk episode 30. I'm your host, Ahmed Mion. Today I'm joined by Tristan
Hello.
and Connor.
Hey guys.
And the first thing I want to talk about today is streaming, specifically Microsoft and Google's initiative for game streaming. Now, both of those companies seem very confident in their upcoming streaming technology. Microsoft so boldly saying that very soon we'll be able to have console quality game streaming with zero latency on any screen we own. And I think that's a very bold statement. So I kind of want to dissect like the state of streaming today and whether you guys think that sort of thing is possible in the next year or two or so.
So I'll just go ahead and say I've been kind of, I wouldn't say ground floor, but I've had my eye on this technology for a long time. I actually had a game or two on OnLive back when that was a thing. Are you guys aware of it?
I've heard of the name, but I don't.
Can
know
you
what it
can you
is.
elaborate a little?
OnLive was the original, as far as I know, the original game streaming service. So the way theirs was set up was basically if you bought a game on the OnLive store, you could play it through OnLive servers and it just streamed the game to you. And like I was young at the time, I was probably 13 or something. So I was content with it back then. This was forever ago. Like almost 10 years, not quite, but and it worked well enough for me in around Charleston, West Virginia. I think I had like a 10 meg connection or something at my house. And I don't know, I didn't notice any huge issues with it. So, but it obviously OnLive tanked and ended up being sold to PlayStation, which is what PlayStation Now uses. PlayStation Now is done through OnLive servers.
Right. So just doing a quick Google search, Microsoft's new service is called xCloud. And the idea is it'll stream Xbox games to PCs, consoles, and mobile devices, and it'll be available for trials in 2019. So I get that streaming has been around for a long time, but for them to say like console quality streaming with little to no latency, I just don't really see how that's possible, especially with today's internet infrastructure is like throughout the majority of the country. Maybe I get if you live in an area with fiber, this sort of thing is possible. But what about some guy living in Montana? Like, I don't think he'll be able to utilize something like this.
See, I think I buy it.
I'm
Like
having a hard time buying it. Especially seeing. I don't think it's going to be a problem on on Microsoft or Google's end. I think it's going to be a hard sell for the consumer end of this technology, especially with the way like the telecom industry is right now and the way that people are already getting upset over data caps. Like you're talking about streaming a AAA game over the internet continuously. People who have like data caps on that internet, that's going to be a huge strain on them to be able to do this kind of gaming with zero latency.
Yeah, the whole data cap thing is a great point that I forgot to mention. Like, especially with Comcast imposing data restrictions in a lot of regions where they provide service for what seems completely like an arbitrary reason. There's no reason at all to impose these restrictions other than to just nickel and dime people. But
right. I don't know, just on like whether or not the technology can work though.
Oh, I absolutely think it can work. It's just a question of
Same.
how viable it'll be, especially like next year. Microsoft's like starting to roll this out next year, which is just crazy to me.
I think for sure it'll work in like cities, like any huge population center. I think it'll work well. But and I think it just. I mean, there's a reason. Like, I think you were the one telling me, Ahmed, that they're going to release a console as well as a streaming console next gen.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But go ahead.
But that's them acknowledging the fact that this just isn't going to work everywhere. They're not claiming it will, but like where it works, it'll work well, I think, is the pitch. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no problem with offering this service to some people.
Yeah. And absolutely I agree that Microsoft's right here that this is probably the future of just playing games in general. Like streaming and cloud technology is going to be like a core component of this going forward. But just speaking from my like preferences and like kind of my old-fashioned viewpoints, I'd never want like my hardware box to go away. I think that would be pretty sad if that happened. I like owning a console box. I like playing games right there on my box rather than having to stream them through. If it truly is like completely latency free and there's no indication of like no stream artifacts or anything, then I guess I'd be more open to it. But I've yet to see something like that ever. So I guess I'll have to see it to believe it.
We'll see. I think the technology in the next 5 years will exist because I think 5G is going to roll out fairly soon. And anywhere that has 5G, this won't be a problem at all. 5G is just absurdly fast, and it's just a non-issue once that rolls out.
Yeah, if we're rolling out 5G, and that's great for whoever has access to it, but Microsoft is a global company, so the idea of this being available and working enough across the globe with varying infrastructures for internet technology, I could see it in maybe the next 5 years for the US, but I can't speak the same for every other part of the world.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think Microsoft needs to be very careful in their messaging for when they start rolling out this service. They don't want another Xbox One always on debacle where, Don Matrick was like, he infamously answered the question, but what about like the people such as the troops who don't have access to internet all the time?
We already have a console for them. It's called the Xbox 360.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a very arrogant and tone-deaf response, and Microsoft
but I think
dearly for it.
They're clearly not doing that this time because they are releasing a console next gen, and we know that.
Well, let me just be clear. Like, all of these are very, very credible rumors as far as the next gen console goes. I don't want to speak as if they're fact, but more than likely they're true. Just wanted to get that out there.
I wanted to talk a little bit, I guess, moving from the differences we've got going on here between Microsoft's streaming service and what Google is offering. Since Microsoft is still offering a box experience, the difference being one will be like physical discs and probably digital downloads. I don't know if they're ready to abandon physical just yet, but
I think,
then the other.
I just wanted to interject there. I think Microsoft is ready to abandon physical. I think they were ready to abandon it with the Xbox One. And I think they clearly saw that people were not ready to make the jump to completely digital and like always online and all of that. So that's why. I mean,
I don't know.
That was a very different time, honestly. I mean, that was 2013. We're in 2018 now, and I think if they tried the same thing again, it would probably work.
I'm not convinced because if there's one thing to me that game streaming can do way better, it's like hard drive space. Hard drive space is such an issue right now for a lot of people I know. Like my roommate, every time you get to game, you got to wait for it to download, and then half the time you have to delete something else that you kind of like to make room for the new game. And even when you're getting a disc now, there's like a 50 gig download with it, and that's horrible. That's so much storage.
Incidentally, just as a side note, Red Dead 2 is supposedly going to come out on 2 discs just because of its massive size.
See, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. Like 2 discs, okay, as long as I don't have like 100 gig download with on top of the disc. That's just
Tristan
absurd.
Mentioned you have a data cap, Use all of your data.
Yeah, some of those data caps like 200 gigs. You download 2 games and like your data cap's gone. You can't watch Netflix the rest of the month. Like that's horrendous. And I think that's a real issue that the people just don't acknowledge as much as I'd like them to. Like my PC has 2 terabytes and I don't have that many games installed and it's full.
Yeah, same with my PS4. 2 terabytes, completely full.
And that's just absurd. And a lot of it's just 4K assets are huge. But a lot of it, I firmly believe, is developers not doing all that they could to make their games smaller.
Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, it seems like game development is such a chaotic and rushed, experience that they just kind of, by the end of development, they just kind of get stuff done and get it out the door. They don't really have time for optimizations.
Right. You don't I don't know, stuff I'm talking about, I think originally Titanfall 2 shipped with voices for every language. And you didn't need that. Those files were huge. That was 30 gigs of voice lines that you just don't need at all. And it was a 50 gig game. It was just wasted space, you know? But that's an aside. So we should probably get back to game streaming.
Actually, as you were bringing that up, that just I had a thought about I guess if as developers, and we're expecting that this streaming your game just straight over the internet is going to happen, do you think developers are going to buy into the idea that there will be zero latency, or will they build games built for streaming where, okay, we expect some latency, so the game will be a little more forgiving if you can't stream it at the highest rates?
Kind of like how design of the FPS changed with the advent of like the twin stick controller.
I don't know.
scheme.
I tend to say that I don't think that's going to happen. I still think the developers are just going to make games like the way they've been making games, and it's up to the hardware manufacturers to sort of accommodate them, because if you make a box that does something but everyone's games breaks on it, like no one's going to play your box,
Right.
I don't know. That's tough to say. I mean, we already have like in any multiplayer game, we already have so much compensation for latency, and that's another thing that seemed to kind of boggles my mind. Like, if we're dealing with latency in a multiplayer game, like how are we gonna have a stream with no latency? Like, what's the reasoning there? How can one have latency and one not? It just, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense to me.
I mean, it definitely, Microsoft's talking about this like it's some sort of like black magic that they're about to invoke. So we'll have to see how effective it actually is when it starts rolling out.
And I also I want to say real quick, I think Microsoft's will be around for a while, even if it doesn't take off really with users. I think Google's is not going to last. I don't think it's going to be around very long. That's just my prediction, but Google tends to make things and just drop them. Like, they're very fickle about what technologies they want to stick with.
Microsoft's leveraging this cloud technology as like the backbone for their games, whereas Google isn't really in games at all right now. I mean, they can use it for other things.
Right,
but,
this would be...
pushing the narrative as Microsoft's doing it, is like providing something that makes gaming better as a whole, I think is a very powerful tool and something consumers will buy more easily.
And Microsoft already has these Azure servers, which is huge. Like, they already have I mean, I guess Google has the infrastructure built up largely too, but I don't know. I don't know how Microsoft and Google's infrastructure compare to each other. Because I don't think Google has like a database center.
What does Google intend to do with their Project Stream? Like, what?
I mean, they're probably just going to sell games.
So it's gaming as well?
What I was seeing from some news outlets was that it would be an in-browser sort of gaming experience. And what I thought would be really interesting with that is that since it's tied to a browser and not specifically a machine, that you could play these games on any device that could potentially link up to their system.
That's
I'm not entirely
huge.
certain whether or not that would be huge. That would be a selling point for me over what Microsoft is doing, but I don't know if I can see Google going in that direction.
I don't understand.
I was just going to say, you triggered something in my memory. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, at least in Japan, I think, was released on Google's streaming platform. And yeah, I read that you can play it entirely in like Google Chrome in Japan. Just stream.
So
I don't know about that.
Tristan, what I don't understand is you're saying that a huge selling point for Google's streaming service is that it can run on any device, right? That's what you're saying with the...
Is that, like, if I'm streaming it from my desktop computer right now, and then I have to go somewhere, but I'm not gonna... But, like, the transit time is, like, 2 to 3 hours, and I have it reliably, I could pick up my progress on my cell phone. I think that would be pretty huge.
But isn't Microsoft also claiming that they'll be able to do that?
That's
Didn't you say, Emmett, that you'll be able to play your games?
Microsoft's doing the same
Okay.
thing. It's just that...
I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, with their next-gen console thing?
Well, with their streaming service, with Project Cloud, or xCloud, or whatever they're calling it.
Okay.
The thing with Google, though, is Google Chrome is a pretty ubiquitous thing. I'd say even more so than, like, the Xbox brand. I mean, everyone uses Google.
Yeah, everybody has Chrome. The Edge is only used to download Chrome.
That potentially could open up gaming in general to a more wide stream audience. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, but I see some potential.
I'm still
there
just waiting.
least.
I wish that the technology was out in a way that I could stream my desktop to my laptop. or my desktop to my phone. And there are things to do
Well,
that,
so-
like NVIDIA Shadow Play, I think.
Well,
or-
I mean, let's just hypothetical here. Like you boot up a game on your PC, and then on your laptop you use Google's streaming platform and stream it to your laptop. Should that not be possible? Well, if the games and the developers, publishers,
right, but
whatever, get the rights to
I
do
want to
that?
be able to play. Like, I would like to be able to play my game. Like, I want the game to be running locally on my machine so that I'm not, like, paying a monthly fee or anything.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
Right.
So I want
So you
to
wanna
have,
host
like,
your game essentially. Okay.
right. And there are a couple of ways to do that now, and none of them work very well.
There's one because I remember listening to another podcast talking about this. Doesn't that already sort of exist in the PS4, PlayStation Vita environment where you can have something on
Yes.
the PlayStation stream to your
Yes.
Vita?
Right. How well does
It
that
works
work?
very well.
Hammond?
I've been across the country before, and I've streamed to my Vita. Granted, there was latency and there were some streaming artifacts, but it worked. That was the coolest part, the fact that it worked.
Right. I had an application called Caney at one point, spelled Kainy, and unfortunately it's been discontinued. But I think it was like $5 I paid for it, and you just ran a server on your PC, and you could pick up your phone and stream your PC to your phone from pretty much anywhere. And I it wasn't across the country; it was more like across town. But I was able to play through all of Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and the Dolphin emulator. Using
See, that's
it.
awesome.
And there was no latency bad enough that I cared, I guess.
So PlayStation's actually been quietly doing game streaming for quite a while now in the form of PlayStation Now, which is their game streaming service. You can stream like older
Right.
games,
You can stream
PS1 through
Bloodborne
3,
through
and
it.
now, yeah, exactly, PS4 games. And they quietly dropped
Yeah.
a pretty big game changer just like a month or so ago. You can now download those games as well as stream them. So it's essentially just a
Yeah, so it's
Netflix
basically-
for games.
It's a lot like Game Pass in that sense, but it also has streaming.
And I'm very interested to see, like, obviously Microsoft's kind of leading the charge on cloud-based gaming and streaming, but I imagine Sony's got to be coming up with their own solution to this, and something more robust than PlayStation Now for whatever the next console is. Be interesting to see how they come up with their own solution.
Yeah, I intend to give PlayStation Now a shot here soon because I want to play Bloodborne without buying a PS4.
Yeah, and especially
So
like,
I will report back
yeah,
on my
and
findings.
if you don't want to stream it, you can just straight up download it now, which I think is a pretty huge deal.
Well, not onto my PC. That's only onto a PS4 or a PS3.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say you could remote play it to your PC, but that's just kind of, why would you do that?
Well, I don't understand what you're
So
saying.
remote play is like an app you can install on, your PC, your laptop and your Vita that lets you stream from your PS4 to that device. So I can.
Right, but the whole point is I don't want to buy a PS4 here.
Oh, okay, that's what you were saying. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy a PS4. I'm still going to get to play the PlayStation 4 exclusives because I'm going to pay for PlayStation
so, okay,
Now.
you can just pay for PlayStation Now without a PlayStation. Is what you're saying? That's great.
Yes.
I did not know that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, that's how I intend to play Bloodborne. Uncharted 4 is not on there, which makes me very
I mean, I'm
sad,
sure it will be
but-
eventually. The older it gets.
Yeah.
PlayStation Now also has what older games like PS2
Yes.
and PS1.
And PS3.
I'm gonna have to check that out then.
I wonder if Demon Souls is on there as well.
But yeah, I mean, it's a very like the pros and cons are evident for each platform right now. It seems like Microsoft's going to have a more robust service, but the question is that like, is their games catalog as strong as Sony's? Whereas Sony's, you get these great exclusives, but their technology isn't quite as up to par. So
And I worry too, like, I use a Steam Link, which is a device you can use to stream your PC locally within your own
Mhm.
home. So, like, I have my Steam Link plugged in my living room, and my PC is in my bedroom. But if I want to play a game on my TV in the living room, I can, because the Steam Link is in
yeah,
there.
I mean, I think
And,
streaming, as long as it's all, in your local network, is not really a big deal.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that that's very fast and all, that works fine. But, like, software side, occasionally there are hiccups on it, and like that's acceptable on what is, you know, something Steam makes. Steam is very very open about whether or not stuff is in development. They have beta firmware out for it and everything. But you can't have that on an Xbox streaming. Like that won't fly.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how they can avoid those hiccups.
I was just going to say, I have an interesting question to pose to you guys. As people like Microsoft and Google and even Amazon strengthen their cloud infrastructure, can you potentially see, like, maybe not next generation of consoles, but the generation after that, the hardware box being gone completely, and we just, quote unquote, like, borrow CPU from their cloud servers?
I think at the very least they'll still sell like dummy terminals, like just a box that you plug in that connects to Wi-Fi and everything, and or you know, probably in this case Ethernet, but you'll still have something that connects to your TV that is Xbox branded, for instance. But I could totally see those being like just for streaming, no actual guts inside of it.
And it makes you think,
really.
like, just let's hypothetically go down the route where, like, there are no boxes and everything is just computed in the cloud and streamed to you. Like,
I could see,
but like, what's the upper limit on, like, the concept of console generations are just going to disappear. It's like literally how much CPU power do you need? How much GPU power do you need? Like, I'm asking the developers, and like, you can use this amount to spec your game around, you know, like.
Yeah, I think there's a scary kind of possibility there where like certain games are going to cost more just because they're poorly optimized. Like they're going to charge you more because you're using more resources to play that game, you know?
I don't know. It's very fascinating. And like, it's upon us, you know, like in less than 10 years, I'd say this is everywhere.
And I think it's also interesting, like you will have latency free online gaming at that point, right? Because, your instance of the game is actually running on the same machine as everyone else's. So there's less latency between your button and your game than there is between your game and someone else's game. And that's buck wild.
Any last thoughts on streaming, guys?
I'm excited for it, I guess.
I'm a little skeptic on its state right now, but I'm definitely excited to see what they've got coming up in the future.
I echo Tristan's sentiments. But yeah, I think this segues nicely into the next thing we want to talk about, which are basically just next generation console rumors and news and that sort of thing. So we've heard snippets of pretty credible rumors from all three of the major companies, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. So let's just start with Microsoft, since we were already talking about their cloud platform. So allegedly, and this is more than likely true, Microsoft is looking to release two boxes next generation. One is a traditional console box, and the other is a streaming box. And right now, their next Xbox is branded under the codename Scarlet. I don't know if that has any kind of implication for what those devices will look like or what they do, but there it is. So my first gut makes me wary that they're splitting their boxes up on release. Like, I feel like for an initial release of a new generation of console, you should just have one box to sort of avoid confusing the mass consumer. Because, like, you know, like, imagine like a 10-year-old kid asking his mom for an Xbox on Christmas, and like he wanted like the regular box, but his mom gets in the streaming box. Like, I could see that scenario popping up. Whereas if there's like a PlayStation 5 out there, you know, like, you can just be like, I want the new PlayStation. It's easy to get. It's easy to sell is what I'm trying to say.
Right, but if the streaming works, it's not going to matter, right? I mean,
I suppose that's true, yeah.
It may not matter.
If the streaming works, but that's also dependent on, like, hey, does this kid live in like San Francisco, or does he live in like West Virginia?
Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think if they give them two different names, it won't be a big deal. But if they call it like the Xbox 2S and the Xbox 2 and the S is for streaming, like, and cost $35 instead of like $400 that the Xbox, like, that's where you're going to run into problems. But if they're like reasonable about it and they call one like the Xstream and one the Xbox,
I mean, given Microsoft's track record for names,
Yeah, I know.
I mean-
it's pretty bad.
I mean,
it doesn't look
Xbox
good.
360 and was a great name for a console, but to go from that to Xbox One to Xbox One S to
Yeah.
Xbox One X, like that's already kind of like a nightmare.
Yeah. You can't have two X's, guys.
There's 3 X's in that console.
Nah, it's pretty bad.
But anyway,
Yeah, I know. It's pretty bad. I don't know. I like to think that they will be smart enough to foresee that problem, but I don't know.
Largely, I think that problem will have to be solved by the marketing. I don't think it's going to come down to hardware at all. That's going to be largely a marketing issue of letting the customer know there is a difference between this one box that costs way less than the other box, that they both look similar to parents, but there is a distinct difference, and you have to somehow get that across to people that may not ever use that technology for themselves, but will buy it for someone else.
And I think there's a strong possibility they can make them look very different too. Like, because the streaming box could be like the size of a phone, you know? Like, it doesn't have to be very big. And so, like, the kid could just be like, no, I want the big one. Like, and there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So I just kind of was thinking in my head, like, it seems to me as this generation progresses and we approach next generation, and when next generation finally gets here, it maybe will look like that the 3 big companies are sort of specializing or banking on a different technologies. Like Microsoft, like clearly they're going all in on cloud. I think Sony will go all in on VR for the PS5. Like, I think
Really?
their VR tech will be built into the PS5.
See, I don't believe for a moment that the next Xbox isn't going to have VR.
I mean,
I could see the next Xbox being VR, but it won't be the foundation of the platform.
Because Microsoft already has their VR initiative with Windows Mixed Reality. I just don't buy them.
I don't
ignoring
understand
that
if
next
Microsoft
generation.
was really aggressive with VR, why not release one for the Xbox? Like, they could have released a VR set for the Xbox One X and would have been the best VR, console set you could get.
I don't know. I mean, they don't make any of the hardware yet. So I guess that could be part of it. All their hardware is made by
Yeah,
third
I
parties.
could see. Okay, so here's my prediction, which has little basis other than like my gut feelings and just familiarity with the industry. I could see Microsoft releasing their consoles, right? And maybe like halfway through the generation releasing a VR headset. Whereas I think Sony is going to come right out of the gate with PlayStation VR 2. That processing box you need to run PSVR games on the PS4, gone. All that built into the PlayStation 5. And I think, and this is kind of a stretch, but if they're really going all in on it, I could see them like modding the DualShock, so where you can like maybe split it in 2 and use them as like VR motion controls.
Do you think they're going to use the same technology as with PlayStation VR right now, like the weird camera tracking stuff with the lights?
That's a good question. I think,
'Cause I'm not.
honestly,
I don't
think
know.
I think probably just because that'd be the easiest way for them. Like, rather than like supply all these
See, I
other things that the customer has to like set up themselves. Like, I think they'll sell.
disagree.
Sorry,
I think
go ahead.
I think they're going to switch to. I think a lot of people like. I think if console VR is going to happen, it's going to have to be inside out tracking, like the mixed reality headset, where you literally all you need is a USB 3 and an HDMI port. Like, you don't need the box. You don't need to set up a camera anywhere. None of that. All you have to do is plug the headset in and everything works.
Yeah, I could probably see that for the PlayStation 5, whatever is the least amount of hassle for the customer. Because I think the biggest problem with VR right now, or at least with PlayStation VR, is that it's just too much of a hassle to set up. There's too many there's too many cables, there's too many things to do just to play a VR game. And like,
yeah, mixed reality setup is like 3 minutes and you're done. So I would say that that's the technology people are going to mimic. Because
I'd
everything's
say
built
if
into the
Sony's
headset.
smart, they adopt whatever is easiest for the customer, whether it's like more practical for them as a company or not.
And then you get room scale out of the box
Yeah.
as well too.
Another thing before we completely jump off of Microsoft, with regards to their next generation efforts, I kind of wanted to touch on like their additions of all of their new studios to their first party. Like they just bought Obsidian. They've been buying studios left and right. Actually, they bought Ninja Theory. Like they are positioning themselves to be very strong with regards to first party games next generation.
Well, I think they saw what happened when PS4 had a stronger first party lineup. And they don't want to repeat that again with the next generation. They don't want to be in the same situation where PS4s are outselling Xbox Ones like at the rate they have been this generation.
Yeah, Xbox is in a really good position to have a strong launch lineup on their next Xbox. I mean, they're already going to have Crackdown 3.
Jeez. Yeah. A game that should have come out like 2 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, I just had to work that joke in somehow. But yeah, I really do. I think a launch lineup really affects sales a lot. I mean, look at the Switch. All it had to do was have Zelda. But like when the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, I had no drive to buy either of them, even though I was pretty into my PS3. There were just no games, and by the time there were games, I'd lost interest. Because that's how I am. I like to buy stuff when it's new, and if I don't get it when it's new, I don't get it.
You mentioned Nintendo there, and I think I just wanted to bring up what's rumored for them is that they're looking to release a sort of Switch Pro next year. I really don't know why they would do this or what it would entail. Like,
yeah, I can't think of anything you would add to the Switch without making it like a next gen Switch instead of.
Well, there were a lot of things I think people found when they were digging through patents related to the Switch that weren't implemented in the Switch we have now. So maybe there's the potential for something they patented to resurface when they're coming up with a new version for the Switch. I know there was something that looked like it could have been related to VR, but I don't know if I see Nintendo jumping for VR right now.
I don't see that either.
VR is not for kids, and it won't be.
There's like a rule that pops up like on like when you pop in a VR game, or at least on PlayStation, that like you have to be at least like 8 years old or something like that to play VR.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me for Nintendo to target virtual reality at all.
Yeah, I could see them going for AR in some capacity, but I don't.
I mean, they already have. The 3DS had some AR capabilities.
Well, I'm talking about Switch Pro. If the Switch...
Right, but I mean, like, yeah, like, it makes sense. Like, they've already worked with the technology a little bit before.
But I don't know. Like, it's called the Switch, obviously. Like, so it still has to do its thing where it's, you can dock it and you can take it on the go. I don't know if they'll just...
I disagree. I don't think it does.
Do you really think
this is the company that...
They would make a Switch?
This is the company that made a Nintendo 2DS.
I don't think they would make a... But that's the thing, like... That defeats the entire purpose of their console. Like, that's what Nintendo's greatest strength right now.
I could absolutely see them making a portable-only Switch.
Okay, I could see that, but I don't think that would be a Switch Pro. That would be like their next handheld, right?
I don't see Nintendo abandoning what they have right now to jump to a whole nother console generation. I think at this point they've separated themselves from Sony and Microsoft enough that what I think they're going to release next year is probably just an updated, maybe they've worked out some hardware issues they wanted to fix with this Switch. It's still just the Switch, but maybe a little bit better on the hardware end. I don't see it being a big enough upgrade to be a Switch Pro or a Switch Plus or anything. I think we're still probably like 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years after a new generation starts, that they'll be releasing a new console that isn't the Switch.
Yeah, I mean the Switch is.
I hope it's a while because the Switch's library is still in its infancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's so interesting to me to think of these three companies, and in my mind, like I mentioned before, they're all banking on different things. Microsoft is banking on cloud tech, Sony's banking on VR tech, and then Nintendo's banking on portability. And
I could totally see myself like having all three of those things.
Yeah, they're so distinct.
I want my PlayStation for VR, I want my Nintendo to play on the go, and like Xbox is going to be so cheap probably if it's a cloud offering. Like I'm not going to have that $400 initial investment.
Right.
So I think they're really going to open the doors for people to the average person to have a PlayStation and an Xbox.
See,
more or less,
and like,
at least.
I yes, all of these technologies are really exciting and innovative, but once again, I think the main thing it'll come down to, as it always does, is the games. Like, they can have the coolest technology in the world, like, but if, say, for example, Microsoft's new first parties still don't, compete, then it's all moot.
Yeah.
All right. So, any final thoughts on next gen stuff? I know it's still early, but I kind of wanted to just address the rumors.
I hate the idea of a next gen Switch. I don't know why. A version of a better version of a console has never bothered me before. But the idea of my Switch suddenly being a lesser product bothers me.
It might just be because it's so recent too, but we'll see.
And Nintendo's just never really done that. Like Nintendo released the DSi, right? And I guess it was a slight upgrade, but all the games still ran pretty much the same. I guess the new 3DS, all it did was improve load times, though, Like, they've never really hurt us in that regard. But if they release a Switch that has higher resolutions and stuff, I'm just going to kind of feel bad about it.
Yeah. We shall see. All right. So, Tristan actually had to step out a little early, so Connor, why don't we just wrap up this episode by talking about what we've been playing?
Yeah, I'll go first if you don't mind. I finally picked up Beat Saber, which, for those not in the know, it's a VR game where basically you have a red lightsaber, more or less, in your left hand, and a blue lightsaber in your right hand. And it has songs. It comes with like 7 songs, so I thought that was a little light, but I was able to get quite a few hours out of just those 7 songs. But boxes fly at you in virtual reality. Boxes fly at you, and you have to swing your swords to cut these boxes with the right color in the right direction. And that's pretty much it. That's the soft pitch for the game. It's very simple. But if virtual reality currently has a killer app, this is it. It's so fun. I just love, I don't know. I can just fire it up. It's super moddable, so all my songs are on there, and I can just hop in, and it's a workout. Like, you get sweaty playing it because you're just swinging so furiously, and a lot of the songs try to kind of force you to emulate the dances that are in the music videos for the songs, and it's just a ton of fun. It's my favorite VR game for sure. It's one that I don't mind the hassle of putting the whole headset on and everything to play it because I know I'm gonna have a great time.
It's high praise.
It's just so much fun, and it's it's fun as a party game almost too. The only thing annoying is you can't really. It's annoying to have headphones if you're playing it as a party game because it's already annoying to pass the headset around. But I definitely my girlfriend and her friend and I played it for hours just. Rotating every 2 songs or so, just passing the headset around and having a ton of fun watching each other look like idiots, swinging our hands around in the air.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I can't recommend it more. It's if you have a VR headset, you have to get Beat Saber. You're just kidding yourself if you don't.
Yeah, I heard it was coming to PlayStation soon, and I'll definitely be picking it up if and when it does.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's crazy good. It's not it's weird because it's not what you expect from VR at all, because it's not this crazy immersive world that you get engrossed in and live in. It's just this game that you need the stereoscopic 3D that comes from having the headset, and you need the perfect 1-to-1 tracking that comes with the hand controllers.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's not a traditional VR game. You're not getting you do get absorbed into this world, but more because you're super into this song and you got to cut it up. At no point did I forget I was in VR playing it, really.
And you got to cut it up.
Yeah.
Such a cool concept.
Yeah, it's a very fun game.
Awesome. I have been playing Super Mario Party for the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, that's a good one. I've been playing it too.
So this new Mario Party is a return to form of sorts. Whereas the last couple games, they were such a slog. You all moved together, and they really kind of stripped down the competitive element. Well, it's back in this one, and I think another a cool thing they do in this game is that each character has a unique dice roll, and that helps like give. It actually makes your character selection relevant because like Bowser has like a god tier dice roll, whereas something like Goomba has a really bad dice roll.
See, I hate Bowser's dice roll.
I mean, it's so good. Like you can move so far.
Yeah, but you can also move on.
On average, though, you're statistically more likely to move more, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he has 4 10s. Anyway, but the mini games are all really simple and fun, and one really cool like quality of life thing they updated was the practice is now just folded into the instructions for the minigame, which is much appreciated.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's so smart.
Yeah, that's so smart, and like it's just the perfect way to do that.
Yeah, like now that it is that way, like I don't understand why it was ever any other way because it's just so.
It's so intuitive.
I never jump into a mini game having no idea what's about to happen anymore, and it was 90% of the time playing any other Mario Party game. Like,
right.
It just I didn't want to read this huge block of instructions. I didn't want to I didn't want to have to hit a button and do a practice round and then do. It just so streamlined the experience in such a good way.
Yeah, and by and large, like the majority of the minigames I played are pretty high quality. Like they're all fun and unique and simple controls, like easy to grasp.
They use the Switch to its full extent for the most part.
Yeah, some incorporate HD Rumble in really neat ways. The one area I would say is a little lacking is that there's only like 3 or 4 boards you can select to play on. But I don't really see that as too much of a downside just because of how fun the gameplay is. And they've added a new mode called Partner Party, which I think is even better than the regular Mario Party Mario Party mode. And it involves a 2v2 match essentially. And the level of like strategic planning for this mode as compared to the regular Mario Party mode is like through the roof. Like there's so many ways to strategize with your partner, like how to use your die and like where to go and how to position yourself on the board that just add elements of strategy that like were really kind of bare bones in like normal Mario Party play, which I thought was really cool. Those additions.
Yeah. It's definitely my favorite Mario Party, although it's the first one I've ever bought myself, but I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite just because nostalgia, but it's the best one in years and years and years, like for sure. So yeah, if you got like 3 other friends and you have a Switch and you have extra controllers, a lot of prerequisites to fully utilize this game, but yeah, like really fun party game.
It has some cool modes if you have 2 Switches laying on a table next to each other.
Right,
I haven't gotten to play those yet.
I haven't either, but
I'll have to bring our Switches to lunch sometime. And
yeah, we'll have to try that actually. But yeah, that's what I've been playing.
For the record, I looked it up. Bowser can roll a 1, an 8, a 9, or a 10, and the dice block has 2 sides that are -3 coins.
Yeah, that's pretty broken.
Yeah.
Like if you take an average of those numbers, it's like far higher than everyone else's.
You have a 50% chance of going farther than a 6.
Yeah.
So, but you also have a pretty good chance of losing 3 coins. My favorite dice in the game is Wario, which is 4 6s and 2 negative.
Yeah, Wario is really good. Yeah. Like I only played 2 games, and like both of the times I picked characters that just had god awful dice rolls.
Oh, really? Yeah, I kind of hate that it doesn't tell you the dice when you're picking a character, but I also get why, because it's not a game you're supposed to min-max. Like,
yeah, but it's going to be now that they've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah,
like, everyone's going to rush to Bowser and Wario.
Yeah,
as soon as they start the game.
I mean, it's not like Bowser and Wario are the only good ones. Like Shy Guy, you get a 4 no matter what. That's pretty good. Like. Yeah. Like you have a 1 in 6 chance of a 0, but that's like, that's nothing.
But it's just crazy because like when we did the 2v2 mode, like my partner picked Bowser and I forget who I picked, but I picked someone decent as well. And the other 2 like picked awful characters and they like barely moved on the entire map. Like I think the final score was like 8 or 9 stars to like 2 or 1. Man. Like it was just like slaughter.
That's brutal.
So yeah.
Yeah, the partner party does like it's easy to like get a real positive feedback loop going.
Yeah.
Keep getting more and more stars. Anyway, it's a good game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you, Connor, for joining me. I think Tristan will be joining us again
Excellent.
next week. Yeah, see you guys later. Bye.